Hello and welcome, Penetiers. I am Leeth Singh. I am a PhD student at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and my talk today is on biodiversity and food webs. So before we begin, previously we understood that life requires energy source, and the biggest energy source is the sun. Plants use this abundant energy to photosynthesize and produce carbohydrates and the oxygen that we breathe today. So where do we fit in the hierarchy of models? We are in the second stage, which is the life form stage. From previous talks, we now know that cyanobacteria take in sunlight and make carbohydrates, which is basically stored energy. Thus the planet should be habitable, right? Not exactly. So it turns out that to explain habitability of the Earth, we need to add in more than just one organism. In this case, the range of different organisms is called biodiversity. So, an overview. What is biodiversity? We discussed. What are food webs? And then, what kind of threats does biodiversity face, and how do we conserve the environment? What makes South Africa a special place is a very important application in this talk. So what is biodiversity? Well, it's two words, biological and diversity. The origins of the word come from the bios, which is in the Greek word for life, and diversus is a Latin word for diverse. So in a nutshell, it is the variety of life on Earth that the communities they form and the habitats in which they live. So combining them, we have the diversity of biological life. Now that we know what the word means, let's look at the different levels of biodiversity. We have three levels. We have your genetic diversity, which is diversity within species. We have number two, which is your species diversity, which is diversity of species within a habitat or region. And then we have an ecosystem diversity, which is basically the variations of different ecosystems within a geographic location. So, for example, we have a bunch of different cats here, as you can see, and all these cats have different eye colors, different coat colors, and also the different heights and sizes. These are all examples of genetic traits variations. So, genetic diversity is all the different genes contained in a particular species or between species. Here we have the Lion King, of which I hope you all will be watching the movie soon, as this is a good example of species diversity. In this example, the different species in a particular habitat, in this case being the African savanna biome, we have lions, hyenas, meerkats, and various other animals that interact. And then we have your ecosystem diversity, which refers to the number of ecosystems within a particular region. Here we have several different types of habitats, for example, your rainforests, your mangroves, your estuaries, and your coral reef, which make up a large variety of diversity of organisms. So we have the scales of biodiversity, which is important to note, and there are three different scales, your alpha, your beta, and your gamma scales. Biodiversity is a measure that combines richness and evenness across species. It is often measured because high biodiversity is linked to good ecosystem health. Some species work together so that they can survive, which is called commensalism, and therefore diverse communities can be more stable. The interconnectivity of species through food chains and food webs forms a key part of understanding our planet's habitability. So we have food chains, which are simple models of the real world. The arrows here show the energy transfer between different organisms to another. So you will notice that food chains all start with the plant, as they use photosynthesis to convert the sun's energy, as you heard in the previous talks, into usable energy for other organisms. And then we have food webs, which show interconnectivity between species and organisms. This expands on food chains and is more realistic representation of the energy transfer in the real world. So the arrows here represent the transfer of energy between species. In this case, the rats and the frogs and small birds, if they were removed from this food web, what would happen to other species? Here, high-level organisms, for example, your eagle, your python, your wolf, will suffer because they depend on lower-level organisms like your rat and your frog for survival. The more complex the food web, the more resilient it is, and the quicker it can recover from system shocks. Now we have food pyramids, which are a bit more complex in this sense, and food pyramids represent the biomass at each trophic level. Here we have 6 trophic levels. Biomass is simply the total quantity of weight of organisms in a given area. Trophic levels are the position that an organism occupies a food pyramid or food chain. To put this in context, let's start from the bottom. At the bottom we have your primary producers. In this case, they produce phytoplankton. They are using the sun's energy to produce large biomass that is consumed by primary consumers and in the ocean or at a microscopic level. For example, let's use zooplankton, which are primary consumers. As you go up high in the chain on trophic level number 3, we have secondary consumers, like your small crustaceans that are lobsters and small fish that eat zooplankton. As we go up the levels, larger and larger the organisms get, as we get towards the more apex predator level, which is your sharks, dolphins, and sometimes your albatrosses. On average, the energy is a 10% energy transfer between different trophic levels. The rest of the energy transfer is lost through heat, movement, and waste and other life functions. We also have decomposers at each trophic level. The decomposers are very important as they are mainly bacteria that break down dead organisms, and this process releases nutrients that go back to support the primary producers. This is important as it means that high-level consumers are contributing back down to the food webs. So, why is biodiversity important? Let's have a look. So how does biodiversity contribute to life on Earth? Biodiversity supports 4 main factors. In this case, supporting life on Earth, provisioning for us, cultural dynamics, and regulating our environment. I will use supporting as an example. Without worms to provide our soil with nitrogen, our crops would suffer. Did you know that 40,000 fungi, plants, animals provide us with many varied types of clothing, shelter, medicines, and other products? Our biodiversity is also threatened. For example, habitat loss. The destruction of habitats is a process by which natural habitat is rendered incapable of supporting its native species. In this process, the organisms that previously used the site are displaced or destroyed, reducing our biodiversity. We also have the impact of alien invasive species, which come in the form of plants, animals, pathogens, and other organisms that are non-native to an ecosystem, and which may cause economic and environmental harm or worse, adversely affect human health. We also have climate change. Here's an example of the heating of the atmosphere known from previous talks. Through climate change, this increases the melting of the polar ice caps, whereby large penguin communities are now lost and suffer extinction. We also have pollution. Litter pollution into our oceans increase the risk of marine life loss. So how do we control all these threats to our biodiversity? We have biodiversity conservation. There are two types of biodiversity conservation. Number one, we have in situ biodiversity conservation, which is your first form of call. In this case, conservation of species is in their natural habitat, which is considered the most appropriate way of conserving our biodiversity. Number two, we have ex situ conservation, is the preservation of components of biological diversity outside the natural habitats. For example, gene banks, which store seed, sperm, and ova. So what makes South Africa a special place for biodiversity? There are two main things I'll talk about. Number one is your Cape Floral region, and number two is our climate. The Cape Floral region has been recognized as one of the most special places for plants in the world in terms of diversity, density, and number of endemic species that exist. It is recognized as the world's hottest hotspot for diversity of endemic and threatened plants. There are 9,000 species of fynbos found in the Cape area. Of the 9,000, 6,200 are endemic, and 2,000 grow just on Table Mountain. However, many of these species are threatened and under extinction. Our climate. South Africa's climate generally ranges from Mediterranean down in the southwestern part to more subtropical in the more northern eastern part, with a small bit of warm, hot, arid area in the middle, which is a desert climate. It is South Africa's unique climate that makes it habitable to many different types of species. So to summarize, in this talk we learned that biodiversity and the variety of organisms which form part of a complex ecosystem that contain food chains, food webs, and food pyramids. There are many threats to biodiversity, such as pollution and deforestation. These threats need to be properly mitigated to conserve South Africa's highly diverse environment. Hence, the need to protect our indigenous Cape Floral Kingdom is imperative. In the next talk, you will learn about biochemical cycles and how nutrients are recycled through the Earth's system. I thank you for listening and for watching this video. If you have any questions or comments, please fill them in the comment section below. Also, please subscribe to this page for more interesting talks from HPW. Thank you.